Hello, all, and welcome to episode number 6 of the Swodcast. Officially the first ever nightcast that we're doing. So, the first iteration of one of the recordings with the sun down. Fun fact about Cincinnati: in the peak summer times, we have about like a 9:15, 9:30 sunset, so we get a good amount of sunlight. We're dipping down into that 8:30 range now, so let's see, 9:45 at the time of recording today, though. So a little later on the cast, but I was thinking probably bounce back to some of this free flow style. Um, you know, just maybe more so just picking a topic that I'm more comfortable on rambling on, that I don't need as many examples. And I figured something good to start with, something that a few people have asked me questions on now, is just exercise program stuff. If I were to start over, kind of what are some of the main things I would focus on. And overall, I guess what we can call my health and wellness philosophy, as well as just maybe highlighting my journey in general and what I would, like I said, what I'd recommend if I was starting from day one. Maybe if I can go back in time and tell myself certain phases to skip and whatnot. We can talk through some of those today. But yeah, just starting with um, maybe the main thing that a lot of people have the issue with is starting and stopping and having a hard time like finding their gait, so to speak, or their consistency, or finding a way to fit this into their schedule. So I want to start by saying I would say the first main point I would want to drive home is the best diet, the best approach to your health and wellness, and the best exercise program is going to be the one that you can do long term. Because the most highly engineered, perfect, scientifically researched, hypertrophy, whatever, to help you get stronger and build all this muscle and have six pack shredded abs. It could be perfect with all the sources and everything cited. This guy Schofield or whatever. He's the big exercise science researcher. But regardless, sustainability and something you can do over time is really the thing I want to hammer home and help you guys find for the long run here. And that kind of brings me to this first chart that I pulled up today. So at all points, and this will change over time, obviously, but as a beginner especially, it's important to stay in a range like this. And then as you get intermediate and maybe in some of those more mid ranges, and then truly in the expert, high level, maybe whatever, when you're 20, 30, decades into some of this stuff. Obviously, that'll change for me over time. I would call, I guess a good reason I'm doing this too is I would say I have a good 10 years, a good decade under my belt now of my personal fitness journey. It started when I was 16, 17 years old. And given that I'm 26 now, at the end of the summer, coming up on turning 27, once the new year turns here, I think that makes me somewhat qualified with, again, a lot of the time I've put in. I've helped some of my other friends along the way. I have a few of my side quests, athletic accomplishments, or whatever, where I was like training for some of those endurance things. So there's some of that too, where I would say I really packed a punch with some of the training, if you want to call it that, air quotes, but some of just the general stuff that I learned with trial and error, as well as talking to some people and exposing myself to a lot of people that knew more than me along the way, and I was able to avoid some stuff. So passing that along is what's important. Going back to this chart, though, starting out why it's going to be important to find this, what we're going to call flow state in the flow zone, what this boredom is, what the anxiety is. So on our x-axis, and a good way to remember that, horizon, x-axis, horizon. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that helps anybody else, but y-axis, we have like the task difficulty, and then the x-axis, user capability. So yourself here, put yourself in your own shoes, but assuming that you're maybe starting from square one, or like I said, assuming I would go back in time and talk to myself from square one, let's assume this user capability is not athletically like the first thing they're ever doing, but let's say beyond organized sports through maybe high school and college, you've never built or sustained an exercise program for yourself. So as far as being your own personal fitness trainer, your user capability is very low. You're a complete beginner. So having some super high engineered, if I send you into the gym and it's all this super high tech equipment and I have you doing these super high challenging movements where, maybe I have you doing snatch and jerks and overhead stuff and whatever. If you get subscribed to a workout program like that, you're going to be put in this anxiety situation really quick because you've got low user experience and you're immediately given super high task difficulty. So think about learning a new language, anything like that. This flowchart can be applied to the same thing. So me learning French, being my own tutor in that, I would say, yeah, sure, I've got a little bit of French under my belt, but if I'm trying to read a French novel, I'm going to quickly throw myself into this task difficulty, right? I really don't know maybe 70% of the words on some of these paragraphs or whatever, and it's maybe some intricate references and wording and French phrasing. I'm going to get difficult. I'm not even going to be learning anymore. I'm going to put the thing down and not be interested, right? But if I'm reading like a general, French snippet from a French news article and it's like 4 sentences and it's based off vocabulary I've been studying for the last week, I'm, going to recognize some words. I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I learned that word last week, this phrase, that's what that means. This is a past tense thing. So I'm going to be up in this flow zone, right? I'm going to be feeling somewhat good about myself, but still challenged in a way where I'm making progression. Where on the flip side, if I'm just reciting like I am from Springfield, I like watching sports. Like if I'm just doing those same things on Duolingo week over week, I'm not learning anything new. I'm just going to be in this bored, repetitive phase, right? Same thing for exercise. If I've got you trying to do these high friction, not actual, high friction in a kinetic sense, but high friction in a mental, challenging, frustrating sense where you're trying to learn these new things. And on top of all of that, you've got this extra learning curve. That's where you're going to get thrown this anxiety. And again, on the flip side, if I've got you maybe doing some jumping jacks for 10 seconds, you might not feel like you're getting a lot out of that. And like I said, maybe you've played organized sports, et cetera, et cetera. There's a background where you're not completely incompetent to athletic or physical activity. And again, we've all done general fitness, presidential testing in school and whatnot too. So even, somebody who wasn't super involved in organized sports past middle school and grade school would still probably graduate beyond the jumping jack zone for this example. This flow state, this flow zone for a beginner, where I found myself 10 years ago when I was starting, was doing push-ups in my bedroom. So I really swear by that to anybody. I would say anybody that has ever asked me for advice prior, and if they remembered or if you asked them about it, you would definitely hear about me harping on said things. So a lot of my roommates in college or some of my friends from back home, maybe just collaborating back home, and you'd come home from break and be like, "Looking big, dude. What's the program looking like and whatnot?" So bouncing some ideas off each other and whatnot. But I again always harp on the push-ups. So why I would do this, again, all flow zone stuff included, knowing what we know here with this, avoiding anxiety and boredom and staying in this where we can kind of make this upward trend and progression over time and sustain a program over time. 30 to 90 days, really what we're trying to do is build a habit, and you need to become mentally familiar with pushing yourself strenuously, physically, to achieve these long-term goals, whatever you might have. And we'll get into the differences in goals and maybe where some of what I would apply to beginning and where I'd focus stuff on would be dependent on what your long-term goals are. Regardless, though, I would, for 99% of people, start them with even for my mom, I would like girl push-ups on your knees, and here's the progression. I mean, starting out, and this is what I did, but we can talk about my personal journey as well later, but is how I would prescribe this first. Um, the you know if I were to test you on the very first day of exercise, if I was your trainer and I said do as many push-ups as possible, and for the sake of simplicity, we'll work in like a metric system of tens and ones and whatnot. So if I put a gun to your head for a dramatic example and said do as many push-ups as you can, and on the ninth one your chest touched the ground and you started to push up and your whole body was shaking and it took you like uh, 3 to 7 seconds of fighting out of the bottom of that push up to finally get your elbows locked out to the top. And when you got to the top, you collapsed. That's the 10th rep. That is what I mean by you can only do 10. And that's going to be a very important threshold and differentiating factor for how quickly you'll see results, and as well as maybe rep range, and then as by results I mean getting better at set exercises, as well as physically maybe seeing results in the mirror. But that struggle and that difficulty and that threshold of getting to that level of resistance or level of failure, you need. It sounds, there's a paradox of life and everything, right? To become, going back to the French example, if you want to learn a new topic, if you want to learn a new language, in order to become smarter, to dive into that topic, you have to become very vulnerable and intellectually, and sound dumb, ask dumb questions, ask beginner questions. The same thing's going to apply here. The paradox here obviously would be not that. It would rather be you're trying to become physically strong, you're trying to become physically fit. Throughout the process of doing that, you're going to feel very physically unfit. You're going to feel very physically weak. Lifting weights to get stronger, the actual process of doing that breaks yourself down. You feel weak lifting those weights, and that's how it should be. And it's a feeling that even 10 years later now, I leave the gym and question myself if I was actually holding back stuff in the tank, or if I was actually, challenging myself there. And it's a very hard skill and like a governor in your brain to kind of remove and let yourself dive into those challenging ranges. So 10th one, you collapse after, not you do, 5 push-ups, you do 6, you do 7, you do 8, and then, 8 is kind of you're slowing down, and then the 9th one is challenging, and then your 10th push-up, you're struggling a little bit, but you get it done. The reps a little slower, and then you get up and you're out of breath, and you can, rest for a minute, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, then you go again. That's fine and all. And we can talk about rest time later too as well. But the main thing I would say with some of these push-ups, and for me at least, when I first started exercising, working out, the idea of going to a commercial gym or high school gym, or going and bench pressing and being around a bunch of other people who were more competent, or stronger, or more physically imposing, that was really intimidating, and something that I wasn't super keen on that idea. So this will mentally get yourself used to putting yourself in that really uncomfortable position, and that vulnerable position of feeling weak and then failing a last rep, which realistically is where you want to be. That's where you want to get in the gym is you want to get to a point where you can't do it anymore. And we'll get into how to gardener and governor yourself and do some of that over time. But the push-ups will help there, and you can kind of do that in the comfort of, if you're traveling, a hotel room, you can do it in a bedroom, a living room, a basement. You can do it in the garage. You can do it outside. You can go jog to the park and do something like that. So even 10 years now into my exercise program, I find myself banking on the good old push-ups. I just did some today for my chest and tricep day. So there's a few really good aspects where you can kind of see where you'll stay in this flow zone and start to learn a lot of new stuff. For my UK and European viewers, I'm talking about press-ups here, not push-ups. You might be a little confused on what's going on. And then another thing that I'm going to really like about push-ups, or especially for suggesting these to other people is as well as seeing the maybe physical results with, some of the confidence of putting some muscle on. This is something that on the first day you can do 5, and by the end of the week maybe you're doing 7 or 8. Like there's a very real aspect to how quickly you'll get better at push-ups and mastering your own, body mechanics and kind of whatever kinesiology field terms you want to throw out there. But just understanding how you're able to leverage your body, getting in that mental aspect of feeling weak and pushing through that feeling to kind of, squeeze out one more challenging rep or fail one. And again, that learned aspect of that's actually where I want to be. This failure, not being able to do a rep is actually a good thing. And then as far as a risk to reward factor, this isn't a back squat. This isn't a bench press where if you fail the rep, you just put your elbows or knees down and, kind of fall down on your living room floor and you're out of breath. You're not going to drop 100, 200, whatever pounds on your chest. You don't have dumbbells that could tweak your shoulder or whatever. All this stuff, with stabilizer muscles, with, the big working muscles as far as maybe some of your pressing muscles in, pecs, triceps, even all the way up to retracting your scapula and pushing all the way through. Push-ups are just going to be a great exercise for all those reasons, for progression, for what you're seeing in the mirror, for what you're seeing on the output, for how we can progress over time, and how I actually would break that down. The example, you can do 10 on the first one. I would say do that exactly. Do a few warm-ups, maybe, get loose, maybe do a push-up or two, and then do an all-out set and see where you're at. That should be day number 1. That should be your commitment. If you're deciding to make a commitment, maybe you pause the video now and do your little warm-up and then do your push-up set and we can move forward. But I would say that's where we're starting. And then if that number is 10, if you can do 10, I would say let's do sets of 5. So maybe I would do, and how I started this person was before I showered at night. If it works in the morning before work, if it works whatever. And the great thing about this push-ups too, the time commitment. I forgot to mention that. We're going to have to get used to committing time every day to our health and fitness journey, our getting a six-pack journey, our looking good for spring break journey, or whatever the goal is. Getting big arms, getting back in shape, whatever. Hitting my 9-iron, 175 yards, whatever the goal is. Losing my train of thought here. Oh, the time aspect. Committing the time. We have to get used to committing time to this goal. And this is a new goal, right? The user capability is low. This is something that's maybe newer or something we're revisiting. So it's a skill we're trying to relearn or learn for the new time, for our first time, completely all over. So working this into our daily schedule, our weekly schedule, our monthly routine. The push-up commitment, not a lot of equipment necessary, not a lot of space, not a lot of time. We can get this done in 20 to 30 minutes tops. If you can do 10, I want you probably doing 5 sets of 5. Maybe, and we're gonna feel it out. Maybe 20 is rough. So you do 5 once, twice, third set's really rough, fourth one's impossible. Let's say that was a Monday. Today's a Monday. We're going to rest on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to come back and do it again. We're going to try to do 5 sets of 5. Rest on Thursday. Friday, we're going to come back and try to do 6. It is literally that simple. And here's the great thing. If you can't do 5, but you do 3.5, we're still going to mark that down as progression. So if you do 4 sets of 5 on Monday, and on Wednesday, you try to do 5 sets of 5 to get to 25 total push-ups and add 5 to your total tally for your workout, and you only do 3 or 2.5 on that 5th set, that's still a win. That's a huge win. That is a massive jump. And by Friday, whatever, if you stall out, it doesn't need to be a straight line up. It's going to be a small climb over time. But again, the great thing about push-ups is physically and mechanically, it's a movement that you'll master quickly. It's your own body mechanics. So you'll become a little, comfortable with how your body moves in space, how your muscles are stressing under that tension. And again, maybe it's no clunky extra equipment to have to worry about. So that's kind of the weekly progression. I would say realistically do that until 100 push-ups are like not easy, but like not super challenging. And by the time you're doing 100 push-ups easily, if you're at a point where you're not working out at all, I promise you by the time you get to a point where you're doing 100 push-ups 3 to 5 nights a week easily, so you're doing 300 to 500 push-ups, just think about where you're at now and think about a month or two from now being at a point where you could do 300 push-ups a week not that difficultly. Like that's like your standard, just got a nice little, little push-up. Like that's realistically where you could be in 90 days. Especially with that progression I just talked about with the 10 push-ups, how to break that down. And then if once 5 starts to get easy, or, say we test and we get a week done, the next week we need a retest phase. And this is just for push-ups. I really don't do this for weightlifting. But this, I would say this is strictly for the first 30 to 90 days, trying to gain confidence, master that kind of body weight, and progress over time. I don't know. I think that's a good place to end for push-ups. I don't know how much more I want to talk about that. The retest phase, do 10. Maybe the next week we'll test after a week of that, and we rested the weekend. That Monday, you might be able to do 12 or closer to 15. That's going to be obvious progression. Maybe instead of doing sets of 5, you can do sets of 6 the next week, or the sets of 7. You'll be able to tell intuitively how much better or worse you're getting. And it's going to be important to do those retest sets where it's all out. That way you really know, right? Because if you never do something like that, and I do that every now and then with, my leg press weight, maybe I put try to get just really what I call redlining. Like if you look at your car speedometer, maybe I'll just look that up now. I think a lot of people can visualize that pretty easily. But if you're looking at your car speedometer, or like any of the, I guess it's not the speedometer, but whatever this other thing is, I'm not a car guy. Maybe it's a bad example to bring up, but red line. You want to get into that, like, whatever your, shifting is, and you're really, you need a red line every now and then. I'm embarrassed. I don't know what that's called. Regardless, I think the analogy, the whatever you call it, metaphor, whatever that would be, I think that was driven home. So in order to really understand and to make sure we're staying in a range of pressing hard, no pun intended, or pushing hard, no pun intended, for push-ups and press-ups, those retest phases will be important, and that's going to be a good way to understand, okay, now I can do sets of 6 this week, whatever, again, you're going to understand your body better than anybody. So becoming familiar with these feelings, these terms, studying this and being a student of it like you would be anything else is going to be important for setting your own goals and your own expectations. That way you can do it accurately, right? And I think that's a great segue. A lot of people I talk to say they don't want to train like a bodybuilder. They don't want to lift weights, get too bulky, do whatever and get too stiff. A lot of girls say that. A lot of people say they want to do that and hurt themselves. Maybe you hear older people say that. Maybe some younger people say, guys say, I just kind of want that lean, shredded look, that athletic look. I don't want that. So I hate to break it to you. You're going to have to train like a bodybuilder. Hypertrophy training, and that doesn't mean you're going to have to eat and do that lifestyle or whatever. But hypertrophy training to gain muscle, if you want to change your body composition, this idea that I'm going to, convert the fat to muscle, I hate to break it to you, and I'm not like a rocket scientist, but on the cellular level, fat cells and muscle cells are completely different. So if you're just going to morph a fat cell magically into a muscle cell, you're going to be the first person to ever do such a thing. If you think that you're going to get in here and touch some dumbbells and start bench pressing and squatting and deadlifting or doing whatever you think bodybuilders do, and you're going to get too big too fast. Like if you fear at any point looking anything like this guy, or even like this guy, or like this guy, or like this guy, or any of these dudes, you, with designer drug medical intervention, are claiming that you're in the 0.01% of baseline muscle building genetics. And then on top of that, you will be a super responder to designer drugs, steroid intervention to then get to, that's not going to happen. Doing this push-up program, that's not going to happen. Graduating from a push-up program into a dumbbell, barbell, whatever program. We need to get this spooky whatever. Even if you dieted and did all that perfectly and wanted to look like this, because trust me, I've got a ton of gym bro friends that have dedicated the same amount, if not more time, to trying to look like this. Diet, lifestyle, exercise, specific movements that they're doing, everything. There is just in no way, shape, or form that this is ever going to be achievable. And the good news is, for most people, that's not what you want. But for some reason, a lot of people fear that. They go, I'm going to get too big or whatever. Even if I put you on those designer drugs and got you on that program, and you did that for 5 straight years, you wouldn't look like that. You'd look crazy. You'd look great. You'd look way different than you look now, but you won't look like that. So you need to get that idea out of your head, first of all. Second of all, like I was saying, if you want to change your body composition, going out and just doing cardio is great and all, but we need to build muscle. If you want to change the way you look, there are 2 ways you can do that. You can lose weight and you can put on muscle. There's really and by lose weight, you're losing fat and muscle and maybe some of that water retention. Or you can gain muscle or you can gain fat, right? But there's really no other way to to be like, I'm going to do this instead to get shredded, or I'm going to do this specific workout to, locally stimulate fat burning. So, again, just pulling up some proof. Is it possible to locally stimulate fat loss? Another thing I want to talk. You're not gonna say, hey, here's a magic tip and trick. If you clicked on this video to be like, okay, I want to get rid of my love handles or whatever, there's no magic movement to do that. There's no magic ab sit-up variation. There's stuff that's going to develop those muscles, but to burn the fat cells in that area specifically via a movement, the burn you're feeling there is not fat loss. The burn you're feeling is muscle tension and, obviously the flexing and unflexing, if you will, of the concentric and eccentric or whatever kind of movements of, the up and down process of, if you're doing a curl, the weight's down, and you're curling the weight up towards your shoulder, towards your face. That would be concentric, eccentric, like the up down kind of thing we're talking about. So that's the muscle, excuse me. That's like the muscle contraction stuff. That's not some magic whatever 6-pack movement to get whatever going. So kind of debunking some of those maybe myths that we might have, and maybe not wanting to lift weights or get in the gym or do this hypertrophy training. What is hypertrophy training? It's exercising with the goal of putting on muscle and making your muscles larger. And I would say, if my mom was coming to me with a, asking for some kind of whatever, there would be some element of this where adding muscle to the physique generally would be, and again, it's not like doing curls and bench press to try to look like one of these people. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but the goal here is going to be to add muscle to your physique, to your skeletal physique, to your frame. You will want to have more muscle mass on your body for a lot of reasons, and maybe that's a podcast episode for later, but again, regardless, this is going to be the overall kind of how we're going to want to train, at least general, sticking on this general beginner. What is that push-up program looking like? They're going to be on some kind of general hypertrophy. And again, that's a strength program too. What came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Maybe I'm a little... maybe that's a weird one where it's like, or is the push-up person technically training for strength, for power, or for muscle building? Well, regardless of what you think, you are going to be changing your body composition for hypertrophy training. So I just want to at least get that phrase in front of you. If your goal is to get stronger, the great news is while getting stronger, a byproduct of getting stronger is muscle will probably get a little bit bigger. And if your muscles are getting a little bit bigger, guess what an awesome byproduct of that's going to be? Your muscles are probably going to be a little bit stronger and be able to perform a little bit better in whatever exercise movements it is that you're mastering. Understanding this rep range this philosophy, kind of what we're doing, applying our push-up rep ranges and our progression to that, and then understanding where that applies to our general goals. I guess that's kind of all I wanted to talk about with, local fat burning, hypertrophy training, difference of muscle cells and fat cells. I think maybe debunking that 60-second six-pack ab stuff. But this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a general hypertrophy training program where we're going to be getting stronger, but we're going to be getting bigger, stronger, faster muscles, whatever. But you should not, I guess the main reason I put that there is to debunk the myth of not wanting to look like a bodybuilder and train like one. But realistically, if your goal is to, look somewhat physically fit or look like one of these Hollywood people that are, taking one of these top roles, or like a top performing athlete that you see on Sunday or walking off an NBA court or whatever, training like this in a gym is going to benefit you. The first 30 to 90 days are done. You've done the push-up stuff. If the only thing you do is change anything, is I would change, I would start doing the push-up thing. I would gather some kind of data over a 7-day period of how many steps you average per day. If you already wear like a Whoop band or an Apple Watch, or you have an idea that, you walk like a few amount of miles or whatever, perfect. We're going to double that if you want to lose fat. If you don't want to lose fat, if you're not trying to lose weight, we're not going to worry about the step count too much other than tracking what it's currently at. If you're in the category, so this is kind of where like the if-then thing would pop up. If you are in that other group or you are a weight loss, if I'm going to generalize and say you're probably the average American, probably between 3,000 to 6,000 steps a day on average, probably more sedentary lifestyle, so maybe 4,000 to 5,000. I'm going to say double that and get to 10 to 12. I would definitely strongly suggest we average instead of 4 to 5. It's closer to the 8 to 12 range for sure. Steps per day for a full 5-day exercise period. And again, I think this is really low-hanging fruit, so I think the steps is something you should be doing 7 days a week. If we're going to start to talk about mixing these two and you want to lose weight while simultaneously doing some of these push-up and strength stuff, I guess this is a good time to talk about this. You won't be the first exception to the law of thermodynamics. I'm willing to stick my I graduated from the School of Professional Sciences from Xavier University. I'm willing to stick my neck out as a professional undergrad scientist and say that you, as an individual on a fitness journey, will not be the first exception to the law of thermodynamics. I'll look up my prompt here so we can just, so thermodynamics, why are we talking about that? What does that have to do with anything? We exist in the physical realm here that we understand through quantum, all of this kind of entanglement, quantum mechanics, physics, all these laws of physics and matter and everything. So, energy is not going to be destroyed. We can talk about entropy. We can talk about this other stuff. Actually, that's a good idea. I'll probably do a whole podcast on entropy. I really like entropy. But regardless, you're not going to be the first exception to the law of thermodynamics. So what does this have to do with my weight loss journey? We talked about how we're going to burn calories with generally just kind of surface level with our daily steps and our weekly step count, but as well as with our push-ups, right? So that's going to be a very high friction, mentally frustrating, challenging. The walking somewhere down here for, again, assuming that you don't have extreme outlying health stuff, and that's totally fine if you are in there, then maybe the walking is closer to this anxiety range. And that's where we're going to start, and we'll eliminate the push-ups. But again, assuming we're that person who did organized sports, et cetera, is looking to pick up an old habit or start, this fitness journey for themselves for the first time in their adult life or whatever. Understanding where we're at with the boredom and where the steps are at and the push-ups. The push-ups are going to be closer to the anxiety. This is going to be the new thing that we're introducing. Even if you're not exercising, you're at the very least walking from the couch to the fridge, right? So you can you can bank on those two things as being how we're burning calories, how we're burning our energy source. I don't know if you guys did like the function inputs as a kid. I don't know if you guys ever did that. Yeah, here we go. I remember my math teacher talking about this. Great way to think about this. Inputs. This is your food, right? This is our food. This is our water. Function machine. This is our body. Our body is existing in the realm of the metaphysical or the physical world, right? It's bound to physical limits of matter, the law of physics, the law of thermodynamics. We put food in. Our outputs, I guess this may be a little different, but how we function, how we get this machine to burn some of these inputs off, our output of that energy is going to be via the walking, the push-ups, the exercise programs that we get going here. So that'll burn off. I guess the outputs would be more so like the energy and the sweat and the, creating the entropy and whatnot, and whatever. I think the overarching theme there relates pretty well, and as far as understanding ourselves as like a car or something, and you put good gas in, you get better mileage out of it, right? You put good food in, high quality whole food stuff, maybe you'll exercise and stuff will be a little bit better. We'll talk about diet and stuff maybe in a different episode, but just understanding how it is generally at the very baseline level, how we're going to lose weight. We're going to have to burn more calories than we're putting in on a daily basis. I'm going to talk about averages and stuff too for a second. If you want to understand how much you weigh, this is why I never step on a scale or anything. If you want to understand how much you weigh, if you want to understand how many steps you get in a week, if you want to understand, how many calories you eat on week and average, before we jump to conclusions, really what you're going to have to do is, again, we're going to have to get used to making this commitment, but we're going to have to, for weight, if you're trying to understand what you weigh, you're going to have to weigh yourself. What I would recommend, weigh yourself first thing in the morning, whatever your morning routine is. You piss, you shit, you brush your teeth, you shower. Weigh yourself after that, weigh yourself before that first thing in the morning. The same time, before the routine, after the routine, every time at one point in the morning, at one point after you eat lunch, before you eat lunch, afternoon shit after work, whatever, and then once before bed, whether it's the afternoon, evening shower before you crawl into bed, whatever. So you're going to weigh yourself those 3 times a day, 7 days a week, for a full 30 days, And then you're just gonna like, obviously you can see where I'm going with that, where it's like you need to average, and just by doing weighing yourself in the morning and afternoon, maybe not even that third one in the middle, if you just do in the morning and afternoon every day for a 5 day work week, you'll go, holy shit, okay, I weighed, I'll use myself as an example. I'll maybe wake up after eating a light dinner one night, not a lot of carbs, and maybe a little dehydrated, and I'll go, because I was smoking doinks in my car, and I'll go, holy shit, I weigh 177 pounds. It's that morning skitty, right? It's that dehydration or whatever. You're all drawn out and stuff. You go, wow, I'm skinny. I'm 177 pounds. I lost all this weight. I'm super skinny. I can eat a lot of weight or a lot of food this week. Maybe I'll have an extra donut on my lunch break at the bakery. One, because they give me a good discount because I go there all the time. And please and thank you goes a long way, guys. I get an employee discount there just because I treat the people nice. But maybe I'll get the extra donut. No. Well, here's what you need to understand. Water retention is going to have a lot to do with how much you weigh. Whether or not you drank a water bottle that day could, throw off your weight a good amount. Meal consumption, carbohydrates, hydrate. A lot of people don't even think about that word, carbohydrate, water, carbs, all that stuff going together and fluctuating what you're holding on to and absorbing in your body. Kind of that glycogen storage and whatnot. And then again, what you're weighing at night after shitting, after sweating, after doing whatever that day. You might see myself with that 177 example in the morning drawn out. After a night of whatever, my lady just made some really good salmon tonight. Maybe I had a smoothie from Smoothie King, another place where I know the manager, just say what's up to him, talk to him about NBA and stuff. Gives me a free smoothie there. But you can't abuse that power. That's important. Maybe that's another podcast topic. You can't abuse the free smoothie powers. But again, after eating all that stuff, maybe I didn't sit in the sauna today, and maybe it was a rest day from the gym, and maybe I didn't really walk the dogs too much. Maybe it was just overall a relaxing day. I step on the scale. Now I'm 183 pounds. Holy shit, did I gain, all that fat? I gained 5 pounds of fat, maybe a little bit of muscle. It's like, no. Your body is naturally going to fluctuate. So you need to understand kind of where you float between. So, if one of my gym bros bumped into me and was like, what are you weighing these days? I'd be like, I'm floating between around 178 and 182. Because, I got a better understanding of maybe if I weigh myself randomly every now and then, I'm going to say, okay, that's kind of maybe conservatively plus or minus 3.5, 5 pounds, And again, there's a lot of variables for my fellow scientists out there, a lot of confounds that are going to play into what our daily weight is or whatever that instance is in that exact instance we're stepping on the scale. So if we get a broader sample size where we're looking at this for a few times a day over several weeks to a 30-day period, and we're averaging that out, then we'll have a better understanding of where you are weight-wise, as well as how many calories you eat a day, how many steps you take a day, how many calories you eat a day, a week. And again, I think a good way to look at this too is definitely by day, but if you need to take a step back and zoom out and detach a little bit, think about it by week. I personally think of my caloric intake more as a weekly thing. So if my daily protein intake was a little low today, I think naturally just looking at how it fluctuates over the week, I'll probably and you'll find this too as you track more of this stuff or become cognizant of more of this stuff. You'll go, oh, I was kind of hungry on Tuesday. I really wanted a burger or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's because maybe you didn't have as many carbs earlier in the week, and it was just like a lean meat kind of meal that you had just naturally throughout the day. And maybe you drank some more calories instead of eating more because you had a smoothie and a protein shake. So then a day or two later, you're really craving like a pasta or something. It's like, yeah, that's going to check out. And as you zoom out and track this stuff on the day-to-day and then understand it's more of a weekly, monthly, ongoing, this is a rolling tab type of thing, the corny cliches like, rent's going to be due every day. You see those shirts that The Rock makes and stuff. David Goggins, though, he's got a lot of really good phrases, right? He's got something that says, the discipline or, the whatever of this, it's an expendable asset. It's a perishable item. It's a perishable good. So this is stuff you need to check up on and stay sharp on every day. It's the goal with, talking about my friend who's, a doctor, deep ties to the physical training space where he's trained a lot of high-level athletes himself. He's decorated with some degrees. Dr. Will Elvers, shout out to my friend, Dr. Will Elvers, who is another gaming expert. Ignatius, he's on the Sitting Bull games with me, but I run all this stuff by him. He's got degrees, and like I said, you walk into his office and there's just shit hanging off the walls bragging about, terms and phrases he had to memorize just to, make me goofy for pulling up some function thing. But where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. I talk to him about this stuff all the time. The goal for, once you get to a certain point or, even when you're starting now, I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, I've tried this shit before. The reason you probably clicked on this video is I've tried this before. I want something that sustains, or I can, you want to work this into your daily, weekly, monthly habits where it's like, yeah, I don't forget to brush my teeth, or not I like brushing my teeth. I hate having bad breath. I don't like having bad breath. I know that I need to brush my teeth. If I want really good breath, I could brush my teeth a lot. I could brush my teeth 2 or 3 times a day. If I want kind of just mid shitty breath, I can brush my teeth once every other night and shit. Same shit for how your body's going to feel. How, your muscles, how everything's going to be firing and feeling, and how your gut and everything feels with your diet. The same way that akinness to just liking and the, again, no pun intended, the bad taste in your mouth that not brushing your teeth leaves. The same way, as my dad would say, a week of ho-hos and ding-dongs is going to make you feel like shit, right? Eating all those Twinkies and Hostess cakes. That, as opposed to that, your body and diet and insides and muscle and brain health and everything will feel like shit. So I think as far as driving home habits, understanding maybe how we can dip our toes in for that first 30 to 90 days for body composition changes for push-ups is going to change our upper body stuff. Let's talk about actual exercise program, some movements that I would do. I forget. Thermodynamics, diet, calories in, calories out, tracking all of that stuff. I think we covered those bases. All that being said, say you got all that down, and I said no ding-dongs, no Hostess, whatever. I'll go back to whatever. But say, whatever. Some guy did a Harvard study. I'll look it up real quick. I think it was a Harvard study. So you could eat, if you know that you ate 2,000 calories a day and you burned 2,500, and you were trying to lose weight and you only ate 2,000 calories a day of Twinkies, and you burned 2,500 a day or whatever, and you stayed in that, we'll talk about it. What we can talk about it here now, a caloric deficit or caloric surplus. If you stay in that caloric deficit, then you will burn weight. You will not be an exception to the law of thermodynamics. So this idea that if you only eat Twinkies, you'd still gain weight. That's complete. You can in fact outwork a bad diet. It is scientifically proven. Here we go for all my liberal viewers, a CNN by Madison Park. Twinkie diet helps nutrition professor lose 27 pounds. 1,800 calories, shed 27 pounds in 2 months doing that. Consumes about 26,000 calories, or 2,600 calories daily. He followed a basic principle of weight loss. He consumed significantly fewer calories than he burned. So his pre-dieting size, obviously, is what made him blow up. His body mass index was whatever. He now weighs 174. This is a crazy diet. For my viewers, this is probably a little more compelling, just because I'm scrolling through, looking at this stuff, kind of glancing. But yeah, you can outwork a bad diet, especially if you're scientifically honed in and understand what you're putting in, what you're burning out. This guy did it as again, small sample size case study. Maybe you say he's got a great metabolism or he's an ectomorph, endomorph. I don't want to get into that shit. I don't believe in that fucking nonsense, man. You're not gonna be an exception to the law of thermodynamics. Now, all that being said, would I suggest this? Absolutely not. Satiation, whole food diets, you know, these are highly palatable foods that, you know, you can eat a ton of calories and a small food density, but as opposed to that, you could maybe eat two lean ground beef patties and be way, way, as full, if not more full, than eating one or two Twinkies and the caloric this versus that would be way different. And obviously, you can see or maybe infer the dietary difference between the two Twinkies and two, turkey burgers or beef patties, whatever it is that, your protein gym bro selection of choice will be way down the line. And again, I think we'll save diet and stuff for a different time. But going into movements, kind of covering diet, how you should maybe not worry too much about weight if you step on a scale once, understanding our progression for the push-ups in the 30 to 90 day phase, but as well as understanding the law of averages, maybe where we stand weight-wise, calorie consumption-wise, and then daily step count-wise. As far as movements, taking our flow state graph and applying push-ups and our progression of that, and maybe you're saying this is really just an upper body program that we've looked at so far with a little bit of walking. The same exact progression ladder as far as adding reps and sets. So reps would be how many repetitions of push-ups you're doing. So that would be, in our example of 10 total as the most you could do at once. That would be at once would be one set of 10 reps of push-ups. So then taking that set and rep program and applying that progression ladder to walking lunges, reverse lunges, body weight squats, squat jumps. If you want to do, what I would really suggest, if you have access to a pull-up bar, I would apply that progression ladder. Again, the rep count will probably look different. Like I would assume if you just did body squats right now, you would probably, again, just for round whole numbers, you'd probably be able to do like 25 as opposed to maybe the 10. Like you would at least, I would assume, be able to do 2 times the amount. With your legs are a way larger muscle group. You're going to be able to recruit a lot of different muscle components, ligaments, tendons, like I said, muscle groups with your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your balance as your core stability. All of that stuff is going to play a role. Your spinal erectors. So still taking that progression ladder and understanding this boredom, this anxiety, this flow state, maybe the legs doing the body squats, you're finding yourself in this boredom thing pretty easy. Here's something great where it's low-hanging fruit and you're not ready to go to the gym yet still. Old book bag. Put a ton of shit in the book bag and just squat there. Maybe hold it in front of you. Put it on the front side. Do some front squats. Maybe you've got old dumbbells in the basement. Just, kind of flip them up and hold them as like a goblet squat, little whatever. You can do squats with those. You can do lunges with those. If you want to do curls to get some better arms, let's go ahead and throw those in. Lateral raises. Getting nitpicky on form and stuff, I think, is something that's fixable down the line for sure. I definitely don't want to create a ton of bad habits form-wise, which is why I think mastering the body weight movements as far as gaining confidence in yourself with your own biomechanics and how you move in space, but then getting that balance and coordination back. I was even thinking today, like the difference in like just doing leg presses as opposed to like doing clean and jerks and snatches or like kettlebell swings, like these other kind of Olympic lifting movements where people who maybe aren't familiar with it, where it's like you're throwing the weight around. You see someone like taking a barbell and like, a jerk. They call it like a clean and jerk, where it's like they're like, jerking it up to like their neck, collarbone region, and then like doing the split stance, throwing shit over their head. It's like that stuff is like really coordinated, how you're moving and like operating against resistance in space. Whereas some of this other stuff where it's fixed plane movements where you have leg press, chest press machines where it's a little more stabilized for you already. When you come into the gym with a pre-existing understanding of push-ups, pull-ups, and bodyweight squats of 30 to 90 days, I think at the very least giving yourself 30 to 45 days of push-ups and body squats, alternating those two if you don't have access to a pull-up bar, that's going to be a great program to progress with. Talking about how to map that out for the first 30 days, I would do, your legs are a bigger, I guess, I would, just being realistic, let's do the push-ups Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're probably going to want the bigger arms, chest, shoulders. That stuff's going to be visibly, the shirt will fit a little better. Maybe that's the stuff you're actually paying attention to. I'm 10 years into the game, and I'm kind of realizing the genetic limits of muscle insertions and the length of muscle bellies and stuff. It's like, sculpting a muscle to look like one of those bodybuilder guys. It's like, and it ain't going to happen, brother. So maybe understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are and how that's going to help you build a sustainable program over time where you can still challenge yourself, but in an appropriate manner where it's not like, where if I tried like a just straight up strength program, like me specifically, I've talked about this in prior podcasts. I was the child who had visible abs just because my ribs were also visible, if that makes sense. So I was skinny. I was kind of gangly. I grew awkwardly in like between that 7th to sophomore year in high school range where I was honestly on the shorter end and wasn't very tall. Then went to being one of the taller kids in my classes. And then, going to college being like 5'11", 140 pounds, soaking wet. And then, what was coordinated by all means and was completely fine athletically, but I would say like strength-wise and stuff, really long legs, really long arms, short torso. So, I have got the long femur bone especially. So when I sit down, I'm the same height as most people. But when I stand up, I'm a lot taller. So how does that translate to lifting and all this, where I would fit in this flow chart? If I was trying to, and I was at some points, trying to back squat and get super strong at back squatting, and, I've got this long femur where it's like, my squat form's not awkward or anything. I'm going ass to grass for sure, not to brag on myself. But, again, I'm not like one of those short, stumpy built dudes who's just going to move weight. I've got some friends that are just, more naturally built that way. Or just, you hear like big boned, or you hear that phrase. Like if you look at me, I've got skinny wrists, skinny ankles. And that benefited well. I was able to dunk a basketball. It was a little more athletic. And some of the aspects of being rangy and whatnot. It helped in my boxing too. But again, for some other stuff, like if I was bench pressing and stuff, it's hard for me to, longer levers, sure, for bench press and stuff, but way higher range of motion. Whereas if somebody has super short arms, if I bench press 135 pounds 10 times, just me moving that weight to my chest to a lockout position, it might be the comparison of, 30 yards to 12 yards or whatever, and that's maybe an exaggeration and dramatic, but a super, a short arm, shorter lever person doesn't have to move that weight as far as a range of motion, and maybe their joints and stuff are leveraged and stacked in a position where it's just a little bit more naturally favorable. So part of this is going to be, again, push-ups, mastering your own body weight, squats, mastering your own body weight, your own body movements. That stuff's going to help translate to a leg press and help you understand generally just after you gain that confidence and baseline. I think that stuff's going to transition best and translate best to whether you're doing machine work, whether you're doing dumbbell free weight work, whether you're doing barbell work in the gym, if the goal is to graduate to a more particular kind of commercial gym or local YMCA style of weightlifting program, even if it's nothing too crazy. Legs, again, same program or same progression ladder. Um, I would honestly, you might be thinking that's crazy to try to do a all out. I used to do sets of, and you can ask my friend Joey and Connor. They used to come work out with me. My warm up before my leg day used to be 100 sets with just the bar, or not 100 sets. I would do 4 sets. The first set would be 100 reps, just the bar. The second rep, I would put a little bit of weight on, do 75 reps. The third rep, I would do like 25s, and I would do 50 reps. And then the very last set, I would do like 135 for like that's just insanely like ridiculously high volume for like no reason. But again, if you're like, why would you do that? Why would you try that? It's I would say it's worth it. And the other really good thing about this is with body weight, you probably won't hurt yourself doing this in any serious way. Whereas like if you're back squatting or doing it that way with weight on your back, there's maybe a higher risk element. Um, what else was I gonna say about body squats? Can't even remember now. That's definitely the main thing for the legs. Uh, Doubling for walking the steps, especially if you're trying to lose weight. Feet and ankles might get a little sore with some of the leg stuff involved, but overall, getting the lactic acid like kind of just getting used to this active lifestyle and burning some of that stuff out. Like it'll be better off to stay a little mobile. And on those days where if you're super sore after your first day of like squats and you're like, oh crap, I've got to get 3,000 steps in before I go to bed. Chill out, go to bed. Remember the law of averages thing. You'll make them up on a day where you're feeling a little better. Maybe you went to the grocery store that day and got a couple. Like life will balance it out that way naturally too, and you'll start to understand and see that over time. If you have access to a pull-up bar and you can't do a pull-up yet, I would hang from the bar for as long as you can. If that's 10, 20 seconds, I would then try to. Here's the difference too. If you can do a chin up, and that would be a supinated grip, and here's a good lesson here. What is supinated grip? Think of looking at yourself now. How would you hold a bowl of soup? Put your hands like that. Palms facing yourself would be supinated. So when I'm talking about the difference between a chin up and a pull up, a chin up supinated grip on the bar. So you're grabbing the bar with your palms facing yourself, facing your face, as if you're holding a bowl of soup. So that would be the supinated grip. Pull up would be the pronated grip, where your hands would be faced the other way. That would be the pull up grip, which would be obviously opposite to the palms in supinated grip. I would try to get those chin ups in though. I would try to. I think that's a little bit easier of a way to pull your body up. If you can't get your chin all the way to the bar, I would put a stool under the bar to where you can stand with your chin, or kind of like do a little half, maybe step off the bench or whatever it is, a little stool next to the bar, and have your chin above and slowly lower yourself, and just try to get better at lowering yourself over time. And if you can't do a chin up right now, the really awesome thing about doing these push-ups, I would say by the end of the 30 to 45 day push-up range, your pull-ups will get better. If you can't do one, you might be able to do one by the end of it, just because your general baseline strength and all that stuff will get better. And like I said, scapular retraction with your muscle or with your push-ups and everything, that's going to be going on even if you know it or not, and your lats will get tight. And well, I was just thinking about sit-ups here. I was thinking about when I want to talk about sit-ups. I'm trying to think about why I was talking about movements, structure of the week. We'll do, yeah. I mean, I've been talking about this. Okay, and that came with no notes other than here are the notes I wrote down. I put building an exercise program completely from scratch / YouTube title might be what I wish I knew when I started working out. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working off now. And then I had push-ups and sit-ups. The sit-up test is something I was thinking about too that I used to do. If you're thinking, like if abs especially are like a particular ocular, like visual measurement of progression, that it's like you're someone who like needs to see the results physically, Um, and like abs is like an important thing, or like just mentally you like that's a goal and you want to feel like you are doing something specific to work towards the abs. Which again, this isn't like a claim of like this is what's going to get you your perfect abs, but having good core strength and everything is really important for general fitness. And you'll create intra-abdominal force just through the push-ups and squats itself. But a really good way to practice stressing yourself, practice going hard, but again, also feel like maybe you're working towards one of those goals that you might have and continue. Maybe it's like this is the little brownie point extra work that you could consider. The 60-second sit-up test. This is a big shout out to Tim Dondenville and the Dondenville family. He is the king of sit-ups at Little Flower. I think he did 72 in 60 seconds for the presidential fitness tests. The most I ever got was like 64, like 68. I could never beat his record, but every single year my goal is to try to beat his record. Never even got 70. I would say just in general, though. I mean, again, this was like as a kid with like a PE teacher. So who knows how legit the sit-ups are and shit, right? But regardless, if you want to do that sit-up test, I would do as many sit-ups as you can in 60 seconds. And at the very least, if you do like 20 and, the next day you'll be like, oh, I got 22. Like maybe all I got to do is one or two more to get better. So like at the very least, you'll be doing more and progressing over time. I would say, too, a good way to avoid that is sometimes I try to count backwards. That's a good thing. Maybe I'll end on this. How to avoid capping yourself physically. Sometimes I'll be telling myself, like before I do a set of push-ups and stuff, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do this many. And again, we'll use the hard example. I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do 10. And it's like, if I tell myself I'm going to do 10 before I do 10, and then I get to like 7 or 8, it's like, am I mentally just getting tired around like 8 or 9 because I'm expecting to stop at 10? So good ways to avoid those thresholds. If you've been doing 25 total push-ups for workouts and you're saying, okay, I'm going to do 25 total push-ups this workout, but instead of doing 5 sets of 5, I'm just going to do as many as I can for the first set. So then I do 25. And again, honestly, if you like your goal is to get jacked and fast track, here's how I would really do the push-ups now. If I were to go back and tell myself everything I knew and skip all that stuff. This is like the Disney Fast Pass. I can do 10 push-ups, gun to my head. I do that first week program. Second week, I'm saying I worked up to, by the end of the week, I was doing 30 push-ups, 25 push-ups. Say it was 25. The next Monday, I'm going to put 25 push-ups I'm just going to put 25 on my calculator. And I'm going to do for my first set as many push-ups as I can. Does not matter how many it is. I don't care how many sets it takes to get to 25. I'm just going to go all out on my first one. Maybe it's 12. Then maybe I do 8. And then maybe I do the last one. I'm not just going to do 5. I'm going to do as many as I can all out. And then guess what? Now my new all-out number is 28 or 29. And then, bam, there's another good way to prevent yourself from capping yourself physically or maybe on a certain performance level. If you're running and you're like, I'm just going to run a mile or two today, and typically 2 miles takes you 15 minutes or 2 miles takes you 20 minutes, 2 10-minute miles, and you haven't seen progression in a while, here's for my runners, maybe just go, I'm going to run for 20 minutes today. Just go run for 20 minutes. When I was training for the double marathon, the best results I got were the first day I told myself this is going to really suck, but I just have to get used to running a lot. So I'm just going to run for an hour straight. I don't care if I get, for me, a 10-minute mile for someone who ran track and cross country competitively, it was like kind of like a low whatever. But the idea of running for 60 minutes straight was super overwhelming. So I was like, maybe if I pose that like that, that'll be, a good way to, kind of flip it on yourself. If you've only been counting 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, count 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And if you get to 1, 0, you really want those extra points, -1, -2, -3, bam, there you go. So there are some good ways to kind of like remove maybe like mental limits to your performance before you actually get in here. And if you want to kind of fast track that retest phase or really get used to that pushing that intensity instead of having a low threshold for intensity and for output, having a really high threshold where you're used to, if you want to get used to failing earlier, if you want to get used to being uncomfortable and falling on your face, literally because you're not being able to do a push-up anymore, but figuratively where it's like, again, the most uncomfortable part of lifting weights, having a stronger, healthier body is throughout the process, you're going to feel a lot unhealthier because you're going to start noticing a lot of these weird habits and shit that you have. And you're going to, the process of, lifting weights, doing push-ups, pushing this threshold is going to actually physically impose weakness and make your muscles, tremble and all sorts of stuff. That's the progression. That's the fast track. The big milestones I want you to track within that 30 days too. Again, going push-pull legs. If you have a pull-up bar, we'll go. Just do like push-ups, squats, pull-ups, or pull-ups, squats, push-ups. Doesn't matter which one's first, upper body wise, but make sure it's like an upper body or like a leg sandwich, if that makes sense. If you want to mirror what I do now, I do pull, so it'll be pull-up day, leg day, push-up day, rest, and then repeat the cycle. So you can do that if you want. Other metrics that are going to push you over the edge, and just talking about the low-hanging fruit today, let's track our sleep. Me personally, I have found that I don't have to set an alarm or anything anymore. I can't remember the last time I've woken up to an alarm. I love knowing that if I go to bed at a certain time, I know my body naturally wakes up after this many hours of sleep. Like it's like clockwork. I know if I get 6.5 to 7.5 hours of high quality sleep, I'm good. If I get like 5.5 to 6 hours, 6.5 hours of shitty sleep, I might need an hour or two nap, So for you guys, I would suggest aiming. And how I found that out was aiming every night for 8 hours. And I kind of found out when I sleep 8 or 9 hours, it's kind of oversleeping or overresting. I almost kind of only need that maybe when I'm in the middle of, maybe really grinding. I've been, locked in for the gym for a while, as well as work's been strenuous and I've been applying for jobs. So there's all these extra outside stressors, and maybe we've gone through a heat wave. So additionally, there's, all of these confounding variables. These are things that you'll start to pick up on as you become more in tune with your body. So again, tracking this law of averages, getting this over time. We're going to do, a little sleep study. I would challenge yourself to aim for 8 hours a night if you're not doing that now. I would find that if you're on the high end, you need a little bit more sleep. You'll probably find yourself on the 8.5, 9 hour range. If you're in that regular range, I think you'll find yourself in the 7.5 hour range, maybe closer to 7 to 8 hours. And then if you're maybe on the lower end range, I think some people swear by 5 to 6 hours, but I consider myself maybe even on the lower end because I know my low end threshold for like, some days I wake up after 6.5 hours and it doesn't, by the clock feel like a lot of sleep, but I feel really refreshed and fine and totally good to go on those days. But kind of anything under that 6.5 hour range, I know. So I want you guys to also fall in that range. So we're going to start tracking sleep, aim for that 8 hours a night. Again, that's all kind of like anecdotal. You know your body better than anybody else, but more sleep than less is going to be better, especially if you're not making a habit of good sleep schedule now. The main thing is going to be not the 8 hours, but waking up at a regular time and going to bed at a regular time. So now I have like more rough time frames where I know if I'm at bed by midnight every night, like even on a work day, like if I fall asleep, whatever, I'm good to go after that sleep cycle. And some people that might sound super late. Some people you might be like, or again, it's just going to depend what time you have to be up, what time you have meetings and stuff. I work remote, so things are a little different. My company is based out of Central Time. I'm Eastern Time, so I kind of have that extra hour buffer where my meetings aren't till 10 o'clock, so my day starts a little closer to 8:30, 9 work-wise. Some of you need to be in office with the commute and everything and drop kids off or whatever. So Again, finding how that sleep schedule and that 8 hours works into your routine regularly best for when you'll be asleep by and then when you'll be waking up by to get a comfortable, not super rushed. Nobody likes feeling rushed before work in the morning, so our school or class or whatever it might have you. So um, understanding what that, not understanding what that time frame necessarily looks like, or not time frame I shouldn't say, but what the bulk of sleep hour wise looks like. You don't need to find that out in that 30 to 90 days, but understanding going to bed and waking up at a certain time, and then maybe after a few weeks of going to bed every night at 11 and waking up at 7, maybe you start waking up at 6:30, 6 every day naturally, and you're going, oh, okay. I'm going to bed at 11 every night, and now it's 2 weeks of my body. My alarm was for 7:30, but now I wake up at 6:45 every day, and it's like that's how naturally you're going to fall into the cycle. So that's kind of where that'll fall. Drinking water, obviously, that's a big one if you're not drinking water, whatever. But the main thing for water diet, I'll talk about the vertical diet a different time. I would say we're going to want to track our, yeah, that'll be that'll be our brownie point thing. So if you want to do a little extra like we did for the sit-up thing, the 60-second sit-up challenge, let's do diet-wise. We'll do tracking our macros, which watering it down even more. Let's just track our protein. Try to eat whatever your goal weight is. If you're trying to gain muscle or if you're trying to lose weight, think of that goal weight in pounds or kilograms for my French listeners. Je connais I don't know what final weight would be. Regardless, I don't need to do the French thing right now. Think of your goal weight, whether it's to gain muscle, lose weight, whatever it is right now. If you're 220 pounds, you want to be 200 pounds, I'd say try to eat around that 200-ish grams of protein a day. And in tracking that, trying to eat within the caloric range as well. That in of itself you'll start to realize how, I can't just eat this burger because the fries, the soda, the bun, all the sauce and shit on top of it, that's a lot of calories. But if I eat, chicken breast and a bunch of rice, which you'll quickly find out why that diet's super popular amongst the gym bros, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like I can get a ton of protein in and not, eat too much fat or sugar or too much extra carbs, and not to demonize those things. But the main goal for tracking that's not going to be for like, protein's king and like whatever. It's mainly going to be understanding and getting in the habit of eating in a caloric range. And then also within that, if you want to, here's all in this statement. If you want to track body composition, track your macros. If you want to track performance, track your micronutrients and your macros. If you want to track just your weight on the scale, just do calories. So that's what we'll do for levels of challenge for that. So if you're like an athlete or you want performance or you're looking to be better at work and you're like trying to go all in on diet, like that's what's super important, and you're a little less important, like you just want like a 10 to 15 minute workout a day, cool, do the push-up thing. Diet, we're going all in though. Let's start researching micronutrients, hitting our protein goal, and then backfilling based off our protein goal. I'm a big vertical diet guy, so that's where this is coming from, Stan Efferding. So yeah, we're going to hit our protein goal and then kind of backload. Usually if you hit your protein goal and you have the remaining caloric budget for the day, you can just kind of backfill that with the rest of macronutrients that you please to kind of stay within your necessary, like I said, that caloric budget. Water, just probably need to be drinking more, but regardless, making sure your pee doesn't look like fucking the yellow Gatorade or a Mountain Dew. Like, just, you want a slightly clear tint to it, man. Like, if it, this might be TMI, but like if you have hot piss where it's like, if you're like, when I'm dehydrated, that yellow fucking red, not red, but you know what I'm saying, just that burning red piss, bro. That, you need to get that shit out of your life if that's like a normal occurrence. You need some clearer water tint to it. So don't be, don't have hot pisses. Have normal, more cool temperature pisses, so you're not super dehydrated. You'll just automatically probably feel better in general. Those are the 2 diet things we're gonna do. Talked about Monday, Wednesday, Friday splits with just the push-ups. We talked about doing pull-ups too if you have that, and what push-pull legs would look like. We talked about thermodynamics. We talked about, I mean, this is probably this is my longest episode, hour 20. Jesus. I mean, come here, dog. The dog's got his chew toy stuck around his foot. I think we can call it there. I think that's a really good start. I've got a few other ideas for titles of videos too, so comment below if you want how I got in like crazy good cardio shape for the ultra marathon. If you want to talk about running stuff, we can. Or I didn't do an ultra marathon. I ran 53 miles in a 48-hour period. So whatever you want to call that. The 4x4x48 is what I did. So it's not an ultra marathon. Ultra marathons are like hundreds of miles. I did like, I ran a double marathon amount of miles in a weekend, which if some people find that impressive, I think when phrased like that, it's honestly, it's not that crazy when you break it up into 4 miles every 4 hours. It's just waking up and doing it. We can talk about my current split. We can talk about anything more in detail that I talked about today. We can talk about diet. But yeah, remember this flow chart. Let's stay in this zone for 30 days. If we can stay in this sweet spot and that's what it's all about, right? It's constantly making the tiny adjustments to make sure, we're floating, and sometimes we're hitting up here, we're hitting down here, but the law of averages, if we looked at where we were, more often than not, it should be in this zone. And then again, what it looks like over time, that 30 to 90 day window, just with push-ups and pull-ups, we talked about how we can make that and keep that difficult enough, but still seeing that progression. If we want to project that into diet and everything else, we can do so. If you guys stuck around and actually listened to, 82 minutes of me or whatever, fucking ramble about diet and exercise, I'd like to think there's some good information in here, but thank you for sticking around. And please do leave comments about what we need to do more of or what you'd like to hear more of. I'm going to start breaking these down, and maybe if we want to do like a slideshow presentation on what this looks like, kind of like how I did my Marvel thesis, we can do some slide deck breakdowns on maybe what a week of a weight program looks like, et cetera, and maybe vertical diet and some of that stand efforting stuff. Thank you again, guys. Episode 6. I think it was a pretty informative episode, and overall something I'm competent enough to talk about at length without too many notes or anything, and just kind of talk about based off my experience. So, again, if this is what we want more of, obviously I have a library of rambling information I can jump into. So hopefully somebody found this helpful and it doesn't just sit in the ether. Have a good one. Successful nightcast. Okay, catch you guys on the flip. Good night.